Welcome back, everyone. For those of you just joining us, we are building an addition of the back of our house, and we have been planning and designing this for a very long time. So we just met with the architect, and gotta be honest, I was going into this pretty nervous because, you think about this stuff for a long time, you get pretty attached to the design and the quirks, and if she were to throw a big wrench in it, it can be pretty disappointing. So in this episode, we're not going to get into all the weeds of all the little rooms and details. If you want to check that out, go to episode 2. In this one, we're going to go through all the changes that she recommended to the model and the layout. Okay, so let's start with the kitchen. The first main change that she wanted, given that we are going for the passive kind of design style where we want to gain as much sun and solar heat from the south side as we can, this window here, she recommended that we enlarge it. So while we can't go any further to the right, given that's where we kind of want the TV to go, we could go maybe a little to the left and also mostly extend it down. So really getting as much solar gain from that south side as possible. That was one of the big ones. The next one was that the mini split location. It turns out this is kind of a tricky spot to actually mount one, being that we still have to run, because it was a ductless mini split that we want to put in, we would still need to run copper piping through the walls to pump that, glycol through the walls. So this would actually be kind of tricky to run that, given that there's so much structural framing around this door and around this window that running this to, say, another location where the actual unit pump itself lives would actually be kind of hard. So what she recommended, and it actually solves another problem, is that if you remember in our hallway here, we have a hole that we planned to go above the door, and that was intentional because we wanted to make sure that the heating and cooling would still flow through into the bedroom without having to put a separate unit in the bedroom and allow us to keep the door shut if we need to. What she recommended, which was a really interesting idea, is to actually get one of the models that lives in the ceiling. So the drawback would be that it would drop the hallway section just down to 7 feet instead of an 8-foot high ceiling. But given that it's such a small space, that would only be for this hallway section. The bedroom would still be a regular 8 feet. And then it would be actually ducted, but very, very short. We would have one, say, duct on this side, so it would still heat and cool the kitchen, and then one duct on the other side, so it would still heat and cool the bedroom space without actually needing a full cutout here. Okay, so let's go over to the loft. So there were a couple of changes that we wanted to do in the loft. The first one is that even though this is technically classed as storage area, because we are just having like ladder style stairs, not an official code rated staircase, you could get away with just a fixed window here. And when you start getting into these tilt turn style European windows, they can get really expensive compared to one that's fixed versus one that can actually open. Our architect actually recommended that we stick with an operable window on this side because my wife will be spending quite a bit of time up here, even though it's rated for storage and not for a living space. It's good to have a second means of escape if anything were to happen down in the kitchen area. And then the other change is we were planning on having some conduit that goes from about where this window is down through the bedroom that's underneath it, through the walls, and then into the basement so that I could run things like network or other low voltage in the future. However, being that this is an exterior wall with, thick insulation and lots of headers and structural members around the windows, the recommendation to simplify that is actually just to run the conduit somewhere in the middle here. So that way it could actually go into the interior wall because there's a partition wall here between the bedroom and the bathroom. And so just by leveraging an interior opening, they could go very, very easily run conduit right down there. So now I'm going to turn off the loft and we are going to go into the bathroom. So she had no comments on the bedroom. She liked the design there, no issues. The couple of bathroom changes, one was that being that we're going to DIY most of this, And so the company are going to just basically rough frame everything in and drywall and insulate it. And then I'm going to do everything myself and, subcontract out where I can. The main thing that was going to be a little tricky, not impossible, but a little tricky, was that, hey, if they're going to drywall, where are they going to stop and start, say, putting in the concrete panels instead? And where are they going to just use regular drywall? And while that's not a terribly hard thing to really draw out, it just started to make a lot more sense that it'd be simpler if, say, they frame in also this wall here, and then while they're there, it would be a minor cost increase that they could just put in Schluter or Kerdy board waterproofing here instead, which is going to save me a lot of time, if I'm honest. That was going to be the most time-consuming aspect of this for me. And given that this is going to be one of the first things that we want to do, I'll just be able to tile it as soon as it is delivered. And then the other one was that this window here, again, similar to the loft where it was like, hey, if we have this high performance house and we have an ERV here sucking all the moisture out, can't we just make the ERV do all the work? And while technically, yes, that's fine, and we could get away with a fixed window here, sometimes it would be nice just to have a vented and operable window here so that if we really did need to, we could open it up and have extra fresh air coming in if we have to. We are going to go with an operable window here instead of fixed. The one thing that's going to be interesting though is whether our town requires a direct vent anyway. An ERV can take all the moisture here. We'll have a little boost switch, say as you walk in, and it will suck all the moisture out and spit it out near the mudroom. But some towns and some building inspectors will require, regardless, having a direct vent. Moving on to the mudroom, obviously this was a more complicated one to get through and work out some of the little details. But one that she recommended is this door here actually be an exterior rated door. So it's going to seal really, really well. That way, while we have an older home that has, older home limitations as far as heating and cooling goes, given that this is going to be a high performance home, sealing it off so that the mini split can just deal with this and not have to worry about any kind of heating or cooling loss getting into the old house, which is fine. I mean, in reality, it's not going to probably make a ton of difference, but while we're picking doors, we're just going to pick one that seals really, really well here. The question mark is whether this door will need to be 3 foot wide, or we can just have a regular interior sized door. So here where I am, exterior doors have to be 3 foot wide for egress purposes. And given that this is a connection point, the town may ask it to be 3 feet anyway, but we'll see. I got to give them a call and figure that out. All right, so now we're going to pop into the basement, and there was one major change down here that I want to highlight for you. So we don't know if the town is going to require this being a window or not. Given that this isn't a bedroom, but it is a living space, it is going to have a door and walls, etc. And while we're not going to do this straight away, if they will require an egress window in this space, this is the best place that we could figure out to put it. We wanted a window that wasn't going to just be under the deck, because that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. And the deck is all the way around here. So we really only had a couple of options. We could put it here or maybe over here as well. But given where I want to put the projector screen wall, and it will be operable, so we will be able to get out through there without too much trouble if we need to, but this looked like the best place for that. But again, I need to talk to the town and see if this is a necessary change or just something that we'd like to do. So there's still a lot of unknowns, right? We have a time unknown where we're not sure because we don't currently have the on-site builder landed yet. We have the factory and the architect, but we don't have the person who's actually coming on site to do a lot of that work. So once we get a handle on who that person is, then it'll be a question of, can they do it in time, and what are they going to charge for the various bits and pieces we're going to offload onto them? So that's big unknown. The next one is really, how much is this all going to cost? And how are we going to make some design changes to accommodate any increase in cost? Because we do have a fixed budget, and while we would like to build the world, essentially, reality is going to really force us one way or the other. So there will be a couple of more meetings. I will show you along the way with what tweaks are happening along the way. So stay tuned, and I will see you next time. Well, I won't see you. You'll see me. I won't see you. But take care, guys.